Hey, y'all. Happy Friday. So this is lesson 5.6. This is our last lesson on the Gilded Age. I think I mentioned it to every class this week, but if I didn't, we have our assessment next week. Be ready for that. I posted your study guide on Wednesday along with the slides for the unit. So you should have everything you need. If there's anything you need, please reach out to Miss Martinez or myself. I skipped ahead, but sort of to close off our unit on the Gilded Age, I wanted to kind of focus in on a theme that we finished up our synchronous lesson on, which is the idea of corruption, power, wealth, and how those can be sort of corrupting influences on people. Where we left off, as I said, we talked about political machines. We talked about politicians who run for office as reformers, people that run for office promising to make people's lives better. We talked about the sort of rewards you get when you are elected to office and you make people's lives better. And I just want to kind of close up talking about this idea, focus in on this idea of what it means to make people's lives better. The one of the ways that people run as reformers is through this idea of populism. Populism is a political approach that's focused on giving people what they want. In the Gilded Age, this is going to be about giving people a greater say in government. So people's lives aren't doing well, or people aren't doing well financially. They're living in cities or they're living on farms. They don't have a lot of money. Populists are going to run with ideas that would make their lives better. Here's some specific to the Gilded Age: increasing the money supply, graduated income tax. These are ideas around money that we didn't talk about too much this unit. Federal loan programs, just the ability to borrow money from the federal government instead of private banks. Senators elected by popular vote. We do this now. We didn't do this before. I don't know, it was the 19 teens or the 1920s, I believe, when we changed the election of senators to a popular vote. Some of the populist goals during the Gilded Age also to limit presidential and vice presidential terms to a single term, so 4 years. Secret ballots, so that you could vote in private, so that people didn't know how you were voting, so that you had less voter fraud. That's something we have now. 8-hour workdays and restrictions on immigration. What I want to sort of mention about this, just sort of as an aside on populism, is don't assume that when you hear someone described as a populist, their goals are these goals here. Populism is less about specific goals. It's more about being pro the people. It's more about being anti-elite. If you think about what that looks like, a populist today is going to look different than a populist during the Gilded Age, because what the people want today is going to be different than it was during the Gilded Age. So a populist running is not about ideology. It's not about lower taxes or healthcare or the things that we're used to seeing in politics. It is specifically about this idea that if people want something, they should be given that thing that they want. The problem with populism, it seems good on the surface. Being pro the people is generally a good thing in a country, in a democracy. We kind of want our politicians to be, pro the people. The only problem is that populists will promise to fix people's problems, and then they'll turn around and they'll argue that elites are getting in the way. This happens a lot in other countries where people are elected as populists and they begin the process of what's called a liberalism, but sort of eroding democracy. In other countries, they'll say, okay, well, the national court is getting in the way of me giving you the things you want, so we should get rid of the court. Or the Senate or Congress is getting in the way of me giving you the things you want, so we should get rid of those things. You should just give me all of the power because I want to give you the things that you want. And if I have the power, I can do that. People who support populists are often okay with this. They often support the idea of giving more and more power to populist leaders. The argument that they would make is that these leaders are benevolent. Benevolence, just by definition, well-meaning, kind, good, generous. The idea of a benevolent leader is the idea that there are some people who we could give all of the power to, because they would use that power for the good of the people. So the argument would be, because I am good, because I am a benevolent leader, we don't need Congress. We don't need a court system. You should just give me all of the power and I will make decisions by myself, unilateral decisions. I won't ask permission. I won't need permission from anybody to take care of you, because I am good. I am benevolent and I don't need any checks or any balances. I would ask, can or does this person exist? You can decide for yourself if there can be such thing as a benevolent leader. Neither business nor politics in the Gilded Age give us any real indication that benevolence is enough. If you remember the Gilded Age, there are very few restrictions on business owners. They're allowed to amass large amounts of wealth and power and influence. Well, what did we see them do with it? At the beginning, industrialists are at least somewhat following the law. They're playing by the rules. Once they become rich and powerful, they often feel free to start breaking rules, especially if those rules look like they might lose some money or power. I talked about this a little bit in class this week, but with Rockefeller, at the end of what we talked about with him, at least, he was big enough and powerful enough that he just ignored the Sherman Antitrust Act. Once he was big enough, once he was powerful enough, he was corrupt enough to not feel that the rules should apply to him. This happened in politics as well. We talked about Tweed. We talked about him stealing money, is what we talked about in class, but he also took bribes. And then at the end, he started to rig elections. So kind of took away voters' rights to respond to him. In both cases, the person doesn't fix things. There's no invisible hand. There's no magic things making these things better. In the end, which we'll talk about a little bit next unit as we move into the next sort of phase of US history, it's legislation that makes things better. It's not benevolence. It's not Carnegie's gospel of truth, or gospel of wealth, rather. It's not populist leaders that fix things. It is the sort of hard work of the system. That's all I got. I will see you all next week for your assessment. Enjoy your weekend.